Going live. It looks like we are live. Okay, is the microphone working? The microphone is not working. It seems no feedback from the microphone. We might have to try this again. I think it might be working, although I'm not getting any. Yeah, I think it is working. So, hopefully we don't have any actual technical difficulty this time. I'm going to give us a little bit of time to get into the live stream before I get formally started. So, I'm going to go ahead and get started now. So, hello, ladies and gentlemen of Vanderbilt and the entire YouTube world, and welcome to Season 2 of Terrier Talk, Episode 14. So, as you can probably tell by now, this is another week where I'm in Baton Rouge. I do not have the chance to have an interview with anyone to begin the episode. However, that doesn't mean that there isn't anything to talk about in this episode, because there is a lot to talk about. This is the end of fall sports. Winter sports really get into the swing of things. Hello, Teddy Golick. Hello. Thank you for coming on and interacting. So football finishes. Fall sports finish. We're getting into the swing of things with the winter sports, soccer and basketball. So there is still a lot to talk about in this transition period. So starting with probably the big thing, and that is the football game against U High. For anyone who didn't watch the game, a bit of a spoiler alert, we did lose. It is the end of the football season. But there's a lot more to this game than just a loss to U High, and even just the box score of 35-14. That was the final score. How is the soccer team doing? We will get to that in a little bit. Overall, pretty well between both soccer teams, the boys and the girls. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. We will start with football. The U High game was very interesting in how it played out. I thought going into it that we really did have a chance at winning. We weren't favored, and rightfully so. U High had a really good season. They're the 3 seed for a reason. We weren't favored, but I thought we had a chance. And looking back at the game, we did have a chance. We had one play. We had a chance, and we blew it. And I'll talk about why. So, first of all, a little bit about the game. Our O-line kind of, nothing against the O-line. We played well throughout the season, but this game we just weren't playing that well. They were a very, very good defensive line up front. A guy that's going to end up going to LSU. We just struggled to keep them at bay. And John Luke was running for his life. And our offense didn't really have much of a pulse because of that. Our defense held strong throughout the game, really. Had a few stops early on that kept us in the game. But eventually, when we're getting dominated in field position the entire game, it felt like U High was just living on our defense, and we can't hold them forever, and we do end up giving up 35 points. We score 2 touchdowns, one of them where if we get some onside kicks, maybe get something going our way, we're down 28-0 at that point. We get the first touchdown. We almost get an onside kick. If we get the onside kick, maybe something starts going our way. We might have a shot. The second one was scored in garbage time with about 30 seconds left to go in the game. So 35-14. Defense played pretty well, especially considering the competition. This is U High we're talking about. The offense didn't quite come the way that we wish that they did. That being said, we had one play. I thought we would have a chance, and we had this one chance. Early on in the game, they start with the ball. They drive down. They have a turnover on downs. We get the ball back. We have to punt. They get the ball, score. We're down 7-0 about halfway through the first quarter. And then punt. They get the ball, penalty, and they have to punt. And for the first time during this game, late into the first quarter, we have the ball with decent field position. 1st and 10, right after a punt. First play of the drive. Only down 7-0 at this point. On our own 40-yard line. And if we can get a big play here, lead a touchdown drive, score, we're tied 7-7 around the end of the first quarter, and from there, anything can happen. At that point, we'd have the momentum. We had the momentum at this point, and we dial up a trick play. We dial up this trick play, and it, instead of the dream of it being, a complete and total success where we score a touchdown, It is the exact opposite. It is a complete nightmare scenario. It was a disaster, the worst case scenario that could have happened. It was a double reverse. On the first reverse, on the pitch back, a mess up on the mesh point leads to a fumble. U-High recovers. From that turnover, they drive down the 35 yards that they have to drive down, score a touchdown. It's 14-0. They have all of the momentum, and the game goes from there. If that play goes differently, we might be having a completely different conversation here, whether that be a win or a very close, still program improving loss. Even if we had lost to U-High by a touchdown, it would have been better. It would have been unfortunate. It would have been disappointing, but it's still a very strong performance against a very strong team. Instead, we lose by 3 touchdowns, and it felt like what some people outside the community might have expected, and that was a U-High victory somewhat handily. But that being said, with the season in general, even though it didn't come out the way we wanted to, we were this close to a district championship, we had a good run in the playoffs, came up short, this is still definitely the way that we want the program to go. It's improving. We're gradually improving. We improved a lot throughout the season. I mean, it's night and day looking from the Westgate and the Dutchtown games to the Hannon game last week. 2 different teams we're looking at there. And we are going in the right direction with this program. Win or loss last week, win or loss Friday night, that is still the thing that we want to hold on to. Yes, it definitely did, Jonathan. Thank you. It was... it improved a lot as the season went on both sides of the football, especially the offense, even though, again, it didn't show up last Friday. The offense improved a lot. The defense improved a lot. And we're moving in the right direction as a program. Even if Friday didn't go the way we wanted to, we're moving in the right direction, which is the overarching important part for this program and for this team. As a first season for a head coach, even though, again, it didn't go the way we wanted it to, I would call it a success for Coach Leday and his regime. So, of course, I won't be a part of the program moving forward, but I wish everyone, as a part of that football team, the best of luck in future seasons. Moving on to cross country and swim, starting with cross country, both finished their seasons this week with their state meets. So cross country had a very, very strong state meet. The girls defending their state championship won back-to-back state championships. They won it this week, and even though they went through adversity during the meet, they still came out on top with a pretty comfortable margin of victory of about 10 points. It wasn't a blowout, but it was still a strong victory, even without their top runner, Bryn Kelso. The story that I got was coming up towards the week, she was sick. They thought she would be able to go. She ended up not being able to go, and she didn't finish in the way that she wanted to finish. I'm not sure exactly how it worked, if she finished or not, if she was top 7 runner. It still listed her as one of the top 7 runners. I don't know what that exact reasoning was, but either way, she wasn't performing at the top level of state contenders that she could have been performing as if she was not sick going into the game, into the meet, excuse me. So even through that, even losing our top runner, we still won with a decently comfortable margin of 10 points. It wasn't a blowout, but it was still a good, solid victory at state. That is amazing. Cannot give enough congratulations, cannot be proud enough for the girls for that great meet. Absolutely outstanding job, even through what you had to go through in order to get there. Great job, girls. The boys also had a very strong meet. The boys finished 7th, pretty similar, if I recall correctly, to their meet finish in state last year. I think they finished exactly 7th. I could be incorrect about that, but the boys still had a very strong finish. This is, just like last year, a very young team that is developing with some very strong young runners that are just going to get better as they go on. And 7th is a strong showing, especially for a team like that. So that program for the boys is just going to get better as the years go on. They're just going to keep developing, and it's a very strong strong year for them and a very good finish, winning district and going on to having a good meet at state. So great job to them. I'm going to go ahead and list the top, runners for both teams. First of all, with the boys finishing 7th, top runners Thomas Thompson, Robert Galinsky, Bryce Valor, of course, on the show last season for track, Kurt Rishu, Parker Landry, Wyatt Bogland, and Blake Foray. And for the girls, the state championship winning girls, Ella Chestnut, Caroline Lindsay, Logan Hamilton, Kate Casio, also on the show last season, Grayson Checksnyder, Madison Rishu, and Bryn Kelso. Ella, Caroline, and Logan all finishing top 10 and earning all state. Also, so moving on to swim state, not quite the same amazing performance or very impressive performance that the boys and girls had for cross country, but still a lot to talk about for the boys and girls on the swim team. The boys had a personal record on their 200 and 400 meter relays from Richard Elfert, Julian Bourgeois, Stephen Ragus, Andrew Lieber, Hamilton Barnes, and Keaton Howard. So congratulations to them for that. And then the girls' 200-meter freestyle relay finished second from runners Emma Danos, Marcel Bourgeois, Elise Fulse, and Maddie Castell. Maddie Castell also finished second in the 50-meter freestyle. So huge congratulations for her for that achievement. She's a senior, of course, her last meet and performing at her best at that point. So congratulations for her and all of the girls and the boys and the swim team and the cross-country team. So a brief explanation I want to talk about. I brought up something earlier on in Terrier Talk a few weeks ago when the boys played Edie White. I called it basically the Holy War. No special name really for it, but anytime we played Edie White in any sport, I wanted to keep track of how many times we beat them and how many times we beat us. My original plan for swim state and cross-country state was for us to basically just look at the state meet and whoever finished better would have won. But it was kind of weird looking at it where in cross-country, the boys and the girls are in two different classes. So you can't really compare them. In cross-country specifically, both teams did very well. For Edie White, they finished first for the boys and second for the girls in their lower class, and we finished 7th for the boys and first for the girls in our higher class 4A versus 3A. Swimming, Edie White did a good bit better than us. I want to say they won state in both, whereas we didn't do that. But again, kind of hard to compare that. Considering the circumstances. So I'm just going to call it a wash, and we'll move on to the winter sports for that record. As of now, we're 0-2 with a loss in both football and volleyball. Moving on to girls basketball. We started out our season officially this week for girls basketball, and some very strong wins with that. Starting with a big defensive showing against AOL, I don't know the exact school name, but held them into the teens and even as low as 10 points, I think. So a great defensive showing there against however good of a team that is. But then we beat Letcher, also at home, 50-28 in a very impressive game. In that game, the leading scorer was Jemmy Detillier with 11 points. Something I found very interesting about this, she was not a starter last season, and this season she's here and she's leading the team in scoring, or at least in this game. So a great game from her. I found that very interesting. And then in the final game, we traveled to Helen Cox and won really convincingly 71-30. This game, Jamie Cheremy and Brittany Theriot were the leading scorers with 10 points each. Brittany also had 5 steals, which is not how basketball is supposed to work. I remember talking about this last season when she almost had a triple-double, not with the normal points, assists, rebounds like a normal guard or someone might have a triple-double with. No, it was points, rebounds, and 7 steals, which is mind-boggling. It's a very, very impressive statistic, and it's the sort of statistic in the way that the entire team plays, not just Brittany, but it shows a lot in Brittany's stat sheet that makes girls basketball at Vanderbilt so fun to watch, because there's a certain tenacity that the girls play with when they play basketball that you just don't see with a lot of other girls' basketball teams. There's a certain physicality to it, tenacity to it, that Brittany shows so much in her play and in her stats that is so unique to Vanderbilt girls basketball, and it's so fun to watch. So hopefully now Brittany's a senior. A lot of the other girls that have that same tenacity are seniors. Maybe this will be the best, their swan song this season. Maybe this will be the best showing of that this season for them. Finally, in the reviews, we have boys and girls soccer. Also, the true beginning to their season this week, and some very interesting games here. Boys soccer had quite a roller coaster of a week with 2 games that I could find, starting with a game against Acadiana, and it was a draw 3-3. The boys played pretty well. They couldn't quite get the win, but they came back late into the game, down 3-1, I think, had a multiple score comeback, and came back to tie. So despite the fact, again, if I'm missing on that, that was the details that I could find. Those were the details I could find, excuse me. So great game there for the boys coming back and winning that, or tying there, and pulling that out from what could have been a loss. But maybe even more impressive was the game at the Karen Crow tournament on, I think it was Saturday. Maybe it was Friday. This game was against Bo Shane. If I mispronounced that, I apologize. But BC, I will call them for the rest of this, is a team in their division that will probably be competing for a state championship. A very strong team. We were down 2-0 in the final 11 minutes. Okay, Saturday. Thank you, John. We were down, again, from the details that I could find, we were down 2-0 in the final 11 minutes of the contest and came back to score 3 goals, the final one coming in a penalty kick. An incredibly impressive win, winning the game 3-2. A very big, not just for the team, but for the program in general. Very big win for Vanderbilt and a very good start to the season for that boys soccer team. So great job to them, and I hope they have great success going into future weeks. Girls soccer only had also had 2 games. First, a draw against St. Thomas More. This was a pretty big game going into the week to potential state championship contenders. The girls soccer team, just like the girls volleyball team, moved up a division this year. So now we're competing with the likes of St. Thomas More. And some people are saying this could be a rematch in February, potentially in Lafayette. So that could be very interesting. It was a 1-1 tie and a very competitive game at that. Maybe we do see this, and hopefully if we do, we can see them again in February. We also had a game at the Karen Crow tournament. Something if someone can explain this to me, I'm kind of surprised by. Both the boys and the girls, I could only find 1 game each at this Karen Crow tournament, which doesn't exactly seem like a tournament, especially since both the boys and the girls won their respective games. So I don't know why it's called a tournament. If someone can explain that, that would be great. But either way, at this tournament, the girls also came away with a victory, this time against Archbishop Hannon, the same team that we just beat last week in football. So a great second victory against that team, Crow. So great job for the girls for that victory and a great start to the season. Again, hopefully we can see St. Thomas More again later on in the season in a great game. That's it for the review for this week. Moving on to the preview. This is the Thanksgiving holiday, so it's not a big surprise that there is not much to preview. It is Thanksgiving week after all. Starting with basketball, have a couple of games. First at Hammond on Monday. It is, I think, the season opener for the boys, and it's against a team that's not very strong. So hopefully we can get the season off with a strong start. Hammond is 0-4 already this season, so hopefully we can make them 0-5 before they can get their first victory. Then we travel to Shaw on Tuesday, who from years past is a bit of a better team than Hammond, and it makes for an interesting 2-day road trip because these are 2 pretty long road trips. Hammond's a good couple of hours away. Shaw is in New Orleans, also a good hour or so away. on back-to-back days. Now we don't have school on either of these days, so it makes it a little bit of an easier trip, but it's still an interesting bit of adversity, playing a game and then the next day playing another game on the road against, from what I had seen before, a pretty well-coached Shaw team and a pretty good Shaw team. And we'll see a little bit of an early bit of adversity, for the boys basketball team, and we'll see if we can come through with 2 victories, not just one, but starting off the season 2-0, hopefully. And then finally, only the third and final event for this week. Again, not a big surprise with Thanksgiving. It is the girls' soccer team facing St. Scholastica. There is a lot to talk about with this for a couple of reasons. First of all, despite the fact that we only have 3 events, there is one that is worthy of the main event title of being the final one talked about in the preview section for this week, because this is a big, big game for a lot of reasons. First of all, it's the first rematch main event on Terrier Talk. Last season in January, I previewed this game, and this year it's in November. And it's just as big as it was last year. St. Scholastica is consistently one of the best teams in girls soccer every year. They're usually one of the best teams in girls any sport every year. And soccer is not unlike any of those others. And this girls soccer team for both teams they're very hungry for a win here. For a couple of reasons. First off, last week or a couple of weeks ago, our girls' volleyball teams faced off in the quarterfinals for state, and St. Scholastica won. So a little bit of a revenge game, although I don't think there are any, I may be wrong on this, but I don't think there are any common players on our volleyball and soccer teams. But still, lots of friends on both teams. A potential revenge game against St. Scholastica, who knocked out our girls in volleyball. Secondly, St. Scholastica's played 2 games this season that I could find, and both results are very interesting in comparison to our girls' soccer team. I just talked about our 1-1 tie against St. Thomas More this week. Well, St. Scholastica this week had a 2-0 loss against St. Thomas More. Just looking at that transitive property, theoretically, we would be favored in this game. Now, I think St. Scholastica is a little bit of the bigger program, so they will probably be favored just because of historical context. But this is a game that we can obviously win. They had a worse result against a team that we had a better result against. So that common opponent shows this is a team that we can play against and win against. The other result St. Scholastica had is also very interesting. They had a 5-1 victory against Turlings Catholic earlier on last week. Turlings, as a lot of the soccer fans probably remember, is the team that beat us in the state championship game last season. So, yes, in the current times, we can see that we definitely have a chance, but they also beat a team that we had trouble beating in the past. So we'll see if we can come off with a very big game and a very big victory in that game. And I wish the girls the best of luck in that big game. A little bit of a disclaimer about next week. Not disclaimer, but an announcement regarding next week. I haven't really truly previewed the season for any of the winter sports yet, mostly because I wanted to wait for the fall sports to finish before I started that truly. So next week is a good week to do that. There's not going to be a lot to review. With the Thanksgiving break, only 3 games to review. So next week will be the season preview for a lot of those winter sports, boys and girls soccer, boys and girls basketball, hopefully getting a lot more in depth about the players and where I could see these teams going in the future in January, February, and even potentially March. So because of that, we'll see those teams a little bit more in depth next week. And I wish all the teams the best of luck going into this week with all their games, however few there may be. And I hope everyone comes again and comes to watch this show. And I'll see you guys next week. Same time, same channel. See you.